on and on and on. And what's happening is you're causing this response. So if you have a stress response every single day of your life, increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, increased LDL cholesterol and clotting factors, that right there is how you diagnose heart disease. That's the leading cause of death in the United States. If you look at increased blood sugar and decreased immune system, that's cancer. It's the second leading cause of death in the United States. That's also colds, flus, and viruses. So you're looking at literally every single illness we know can be linked back to this. If you think of kids nowadays with ADD, ADHD, they're paying attention, they're hyper aware of everything in their environment. You think about being aware of that bear, your pupils are dilated, you're hyper aware of everything. We have to calm the sympathetic nervous system. Even with kids with ADD, ADHD, we need to calm the sympathetic nervous system so that their brain is relaxed so that they can function better. You look at Viagra as one of the leading selling drugs in the United States. People are impotent, people are infertile, all these things are happening, and at the root of that is the heightened sympathetic nervous system stress response. And part of that stress response could be because of subluxations in your spine. So let me go to this next one here. Hippocampus, lifetime care, not care for everyone, not just a good idea. Hippocampal degeneration. This is really important. So the hippocampus, when you see the word campus is an area for learning and memory. So when we think about the hippocampus, think of the area in your brain that controls learning and memory. There's other functions as well, but that's the main part of that area. It controls learning and memory. And also what the hippocampus does is it helps to shut off that fight or flight or stress response. It shuts that stress response off. So I'm going to go to this next stage here. Let me back up and say this. It shuts that stress response off, but if you're constantly in that fight or flight response all day, every single day of your life, you have hippocampal degeneration. Your hippocampus, literally the cells shrivel up, get smaller and smaller, and they die off, something called apoptosis. So you lose memory, you lose the ability to learn new things, plus you lose the ability to shut off this whole sympathetic part of your nervous system. Then that increases your chance for all types of illness and disease. So let's go to this next one here. I'm going to read through this, and I'll stop periodically throughout it and then describe it. So it says right here, the hippocampus inhibits the release of glucocorticoids. So that's what we're just saying. Glucocorticoids is stress hormones. It inhibits or shuts down the release of those stress hormones. It shuts down that stress response, that fight or flight. However, if the level of these glucocorticoids, the stress hormones, such as cortisol, exceeds some threshold, functioning of the hippocampus is impaired and damage might ensue. These are the different journals here. Consistent with the damaging role of stress to the hippocampus, research indicates that declarative memory and autobiographical memory are impaired when cortisol concentrations rise. So when your hippocampus is damaged, when it degenerates, your memory is going to be impaired. Your ability to learn is going to be impaired. Many studies have examined the mechanism by which cortisol, again, a stress hormone, damages the hippocampus. Specifically, cortisol seems to inhibit or shut down the uptake of glucose in neurons. So it shuts down. Again, remember, your brain uses glucose or sugar for energy. But what they're seeing here is that high stress hormones makes it where your brain those nerve cells cannot get glucose or sugar into it. So it starts to shut down the function of your nerves. In addition, cortisol enhances calcium channel expression, ultimately impeding neurogenesis and increasing cell apoptosis. Impeding neurogenesis. What impeding neurogenesis? Neurogenesis is the growth of new nerve cells in your brain. That could be in your body as well, but it's the growth of new nerve cells. That can happen with mechanoreception. But if you have high stress hormones all the time, you cannot grow new nerve cells. It impedes neurogenesis and it increases apoptosis or cell death. It's not good to have cell death in your brain because many times a lot of nerves cannot come back if you have cell death. So it inhibits new nerves and it causes cell death of the ones that you have. A big problem for learning memory, a big problem for shutting off the stress response. Here, right here, it says, infants are especially sensitive to stress. Hence, if infants do not receive the requisite assistance from a parent's, development of the hippocampus might be impaired, the development of the hippocampus might be impeded irreversibly. If the infants are not receiving that love and care and attention, not receiving good emotion, not receiving that nourishment that they need, they can have irreversible impediment of the hippocampal process of functioning and development. That can cause serious problems for that person throughout their entire life. And again, this is not the only thing that can cause it, but high stress hormones wreck your hippocampus. It wrecks your memory, wrecks your learning. It wrecks your ability to shut off that stress response in your body. Often this decline in dendritic branching is reversible. So sometimes it's reversible. However, excessive stress hormones or glucocorticoids over months can induce permanent loss of neurons in the hippocampus. Again, study. There's a bunch of studies in here. The point is if you're constantly getting stress hormones released in your brain, it damages your hippocampus, damages your ability to have good learning and good memory, damages your ability to shut off that stress response in your brain and your body, which can lead to serious neurological problems. And a subluxation, that nociception, that noxious stimulus that is so common even in asymptomatic people, will cause brain damage over time. Cause all of these stress responses to happen over time. Let's go to the next one here. This one here is fascinating when looking at the effects of poor posture. So there's 4 different journals here. Because again, when you have subluxations, again, when I look front to back of my spine should be straight up and down. If I have a subluxation where the bones are shifted out of alignment, you're going to see that in your posture. You're going to see that in range of motion. You're going to see that with a lot of different things that we talked about before. But you're also going to see that your posture will start to fall apart and degenerate as you age. It's very common for us to see this. In kids, we see forward head posture. But as we age, we start to see hunchback. We start to see a Dallinger hump on the upper part of the back, and then that turns into a hunchback, what's called hyperkyphosis, into the upper back. And here's some studies that actually looked at that hyperkyphosis, that hunchback posture, that forward head posture, and they looked at different health measures. So look at this. This is a journal of the American Geriatric Society in 2004. They said persons with hyperkyphotic posture, that hunchback posture, had a 44% increased rate of mortality. 44% increased rate of mortality with that hyperkyphotic posture. They're comparing these people versus people that have a healthy posture, an erect, healthy posture. For deaths due to atherosclerosis, participants with hyperkyphotic posture had a significant 2.4 times greater rate of death than people that have healthy posture. That's out of that journal. The Annals of Internal Medicine in 2009 said the authors concluded that each standard deviation increase in kyphosis carried a 14% increased risk of death. So what they found is that they broke it down into different, what's called quartiles, or different groups, where so had a slight increase, a little bit further increase is the second group, a little bit further increase the third group, and then the fourth increase, the farthest forward. They found that each time they went farther forward is a 14% increased risk of death. So what I'm telling you is when you have subluxations in your spine, when you have posture that becomes deformed, when it affects your overall function and that stimulation to your brain, they're showing that there's a strong correlation with a shortened lifespan. So your quantity of life is going to be shortened if you're not maintaining good health of your posture, good health of your frame. This third one here, it says, this is from the Journal of Spine. It said the impact of positive sagittal balance in adults' spinal deformity. Here's where it is right here. 298 participants, all measures of health status decreased as people started to go forward. So the farther their posture became off from normal, again, head over rib cage over pelvis, pelvis over your feet, the farther people started to slip off of that, every single health measure got worse. And it progressively got worse the worse the posture became. So we need to maintain our frame. their solution in this journal was surgery. That was their solution. And we can do this through adjustments, through stretches, and through exercises. This can be done naturally without surgery. Right here, this last one, the Journals of Gerontology in the year 2013. They found that accumulated evidence shows how important spinal posture is for aged populations in maintaining independence in everyday life. I think if you ask the baby boomers, what's the most important thing to you? Is it to live to 120 years old, or is it to have a good quality of life, to be independent on your activities of daily living? I think 95 to 99% of those people will say, I want to have, probably even 100% of those people will say, I want to have independence. I want to have a good quality of life. And what they're finding in this study is that as our posture fades, they're not able to do their activities of daily living. Their quality of life is getting less and less and less due to their frame and their structure deteriorating. All of these things we can work with naturally. Now right here, look at this quote here. This is from a PhD here. It says, the reality of creating a healthy world for mankind is to make sure the autonomic nervous system is not in a continual sympathetic state, that fight or flight state. And we need to adopt ways to naturally enable the body for health and restoration, not for defense. We're constantly in this fight or flight, this heightened sympathetic nervous system. The best journals in the world right now are trying to identify, how do we calm down that fight or flight response? How do we calm down that sympathetic nervous system to help us be healthy? And there are ways: meditation, relaxation, breathing techniques, exercise, eating healthy food. Because if you eat unhealthy food, you're going to release insulin. Like if you eat a high sugary diet, you're going to release insulin. That insulin is going to cause your whole sympathetic nervous system to fire off. Again, fight or flight is going to happen because of bad food, bad diet, bad thoughts. So there's many ways to do it. But here's one thing I'll tell you, and you're going to see with the research. Chiropractic is a great way to lower your sympathetic nervous system, to calm your sympathetic nervous system, and to help what's called the parasympathetic, the rest, digest, the growth, healing, repair part of your nervous system, help to strengthen that. And this is what they're saying. This is what the best journals in the world are trying to figure out how to do, is to calm the sympathetics, increase the parasympathetics so people are going to be healthy. Right here, it says an active vagus nerve sets new prognosis standards for patients with cancer tumors. So before, what they would do is they look at the cancer, they'd say, oh, you're in a stage 4. This tumor, the cancer cells, you're in a stage 4. You have weeks to live. You have months to live. If you're in stage 1, you have longer to live. But stage 4 is the most aggressive, it's farthest along. You have a shorter time to live. But what they're finding now is that they also need to look at vagus nerve activity. Vagus nerve is a nerve that's a part of your parasympathetic nervous system. So the vagus nerve is part of that rest, digest, growth, healing, and repair part of your nervous system. If it's stimulated, if it's active, and you're stage 4, you're going to have a longer prognosis. You're going to live longer than someone where their vagus, their parasympathetic nervous system shut down, plus they're in stage 4. So this is very, very important. Vagal nerve, parasympathetic nervous system is very important to give us that quality of life, also that quantity of life that we want. Right here, there's this study right here, Journal of American Cardiology in 2010. They looked at heart rate variability. That's testing. It's a way you can test the autonomic nervous system function. And what they found is that it tests your parasympathetic, that rest, digest, growth, healing, repair part of your nervous system. And if you have a long heart rate variability, I'm not going to go into what all these mean, but this is looking at heart rate variability. If you have a long heart rate variability, there's a strong correlation with that with driving longevity. So that means long heart rate variability means you have a very calm, relaxed nervous system. Your parasympathetic nervous system helps you to grow, heal, repair. And that is linked to longevity. So here's what's awesome. The chiropractic adjustment improves